What's going on, guys? Mega Gig back with another video, switching gears as we said we would. We're going to do a monk build today, and then the next time I do a video, maybe we'll do like a witch doctor build or necromancer or something if they've changed enough. I know the bone storm build kind of has, I addressed that, but just to keep everything kind of fresh, we're going to kind of rotate through the classes that I have good builds for, and yeah, and we'll continue on. But we're doing the monk Uliana's build today. And really quick before I get to that, I did want to ask you guys, do you like the newer style of these builds, of these videos where I've got the gameplay running in the background while I'm doing this? Or would you guys prefer to go back to the old way where I simply just cover the build and then I run a rift kind of in real time with you guys, you know, after I've gone over the build? Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments. Old way, new way, like them both, doesn't matter. The Uliana's exploding palm build has changed. Of course, it's been buffed, but some of the gear has changed since the last patch as well. So we're going to go over the changes. The old version is still somewhat viable, but I think to put out the absolute most damage, this new version is going to be the way to go. So we'll go over it, and you can see my damage stat there. The video that's running in the background is just a Greater Rift 85. Which is pretty good considering my gear. Of course, none of it's augmented. A lot of it needs to be either re-rolled or whatever. Some of these pieces are okay, but they're not. There's very few ancients in here. So yeah, but let's go ahead and go over the gear. We are going to be wearing two different weapons here. We're using the Fist of Azturesk. I guess that's how it's said. And this got buffed, I believe. I think this one got buffed. This one might not have gotten buffed. But it's up to 500%. Exploding Palms on death explosion is increased by up to 500% damage. So, of course, an absolute must and a big damage multiplier. And then we're also going to be wearing the Lion's Claw. 7-sided strike performs an additional 7 strikes. So now it is a 14-sided strike build. And this goes great with our belt, which is the Binding of the Lost. Each hit with 7-sided strike grants 5%, or it's 4 to 5% damage reduction for 7 seconds. So a big toughness change there. That got buffed this last patch, so that is definitely a must. As for the set, we are of course wearing the Uliana's set, and you're going to need all 6 pieces of this for this version. And the 2-piece set bonus, every 3rd hit of your spirit generators applies Exploding Palm. And the 4-piece set bonus, your 7-sided strike, deals 777% its total damage with each hit. So it's total damage combined into each hit. So that is a huge, huge amount of damage. And then the 6-piece set bonus increased the damage of Exploding Palm by 2100%. And your 7-sided strike detonates your Exploding Palm. So even though the 4-piece set bonus is nice, our true damage dealer is going to be coming from Exploding Palm. But of course, it's not really going to work on its own without 7-sided strike. So it's the 7-sided strike Exploding Palm build. There are variations out there of different builds that use Exploding Palm without 7-sided strike. We get into those another time. For the rings, you're going to be wearing the Compass Rose and the Amulet, the Traveler's Pledge for the Endless Walk set. And this increases your damage when you're standing still by 100%, and while moving, it reduces your damage by 50%. So it's kind of nice getting from A to B and having a little more damage resistance in there. Other ring you're going to be wearing is a Unity. Of course, these can go in the cube too, or this can go in the cube at least. But the Unity with your follower, I've got the Scoundrel here. I don't really know why. I guess I haven't really played my Monk enough, and I don't have gear for the other 2 followers, so I've got the Scoundrel on here. Don't pay attention to that. You'll probably either really want to run the Enchantress for more damage or the Templar for more toughness and healing. But yeah, well, whoever you're running a Unity, and make sure they have the follower's amulet where they can't die. And then for the bracers, we are using Gungundo's gear. Exploding Palms on death explosion applies Exploding Palm. So this is going to spread Exploding Palm throughout bigger groups. You're going to attack, and your third attack is going to apply Exploding Palm on anything it hits. And then when you hit Seven-Sided Strike, it's going to detonate all those Exploding Palms and reapply Exploding Palm, dealing tons and tons and tons of damage and spreading out. So another must-have there. For the legendary gems, we're running Bane of the Stricken because we want that stacking damage. This is really going to help us too on Rift Guardians and single targets. This build does decent single target damage, but it really shines in groups, especially if you get good density. You're just going to be doing unbelievable damage. Single target damage, not that great. Not terrible, but not that great. So you're definitely going to need that stacking damage, and then of course the extra bonus damage as well that comes with that. We're also using a Gogok of Swiftness. The dodge chance is really nice, gives us some more toughness. The attack speed is okay. It helps us apply Exploding Palm faster with Way of the 100 Fists. But the real bonus is the cooldown reduction up to 15% once we get all our stacks. This is going to help us, of course, keep Epiphany up more often and keep Seven-Sided Strike hitting more often as well. And then, of course, we're using Bane of the Trap to increase damage against enemies under control of pairing effects. And, yeah, level 15, it basically does it itself. Or level 25, rather. So just another huge damage multiplier there. That is pretty much the gear. Cooldown reduction is probably more important than area damage, so you can do Seven-Sided Strike more. It kind of depends on the rest of your stats. I've had better luck with cooldown reduction personally on this than area damage, but really that's up to you, whichever way you want to go. My cooldown reduction is at 52% right now, and that's not counting when this is stacked up. So yeah, we're really trying to keep Seven-Sided Strike up, and it is a somewhat spirit-heavy build once you really get into the thick of things, so we do want Epiphany to be able to be up as often as it can as well, because that's going to generate some more spirit for us as well. So yeah, keep that in mind. As for the cube, we are running the Flow of Eternity, increase the damage of Seven-Sided Strike by 100%, and reduce the cooldown of Seven-Sided Strike by 60%. So a more damage, a slight damage buff, even though Seven-Sided Strike isn't our main damage. But the cooldown reduction, again, is where it's at. And with this version, we are using the Convention of Elements. We've got it here in the cube, so we've got the full 200% bonus. Now, the old version of this would use whoever's soliloquy, Lefebvre's, I don't know, soliloquy. Cyclone Strike reduces your damage taken by 50% for 5 seconds. The newer version of this, Spirit Guards got buffed to 60% damage, and that extra 10% is fairly significant. It's actually pretty significant, and you do feel it. And now, two things about this. One, it only lasts for 3 seconds, not 5 like this. And two, it's a little harder to use a Spirit Generator. You can do it if you're not in a crowd. If you hold down the Shift key, then you can just strike, and it does apply. But when you're running around and trying to click everything, it's a little harder to do that than to have the extra 2 seconds and just simply be able to do that there and apply that. So if you want the most out of your toughness, you're definitely going to go Spirit Guards. These are still an option. And I guess if you really wanted to, you could forego the Unity and wear these, but then you'd have to work a Ring of Royal Grandeur in there somewhere. But then you're going to lose your Unity, so it's kind of a waste there. But that's what we're running in the cube. For skills, we are running the Way of 100 Fists Assimilation. This is going to increase our damage. Each enemy hit with our third hit increases your damage by 5% for 5 seconds. So this is going to be a big buff in really high density. Not so much on the Rift Guardian unless you've got a Rift Guardian that's going to spawn helpers, which in this build, helpers or spawning enemies from Rift Guardians and elite packs with illusionists and whatever actually really helpful, because once you've cleared out all the trash, you don't really have a lot of extra AoE damage from your Exploding Palm. So if they if they do their illusionist thing and spawn a bunch more, that gives you a chance to do a lot more damage. We're also going to be using seven-sided strike, sustained attack. The sustained attack rune reduces the cooldown to 14 seconds. So again, another cooldown reduction for seven-sided strike. And then, of course, Epiphany, we're going to be using the Desert Shroud rune. Infuse yourself with sand, reducing damage taken by 50%. You'll be popping this when you get into a battle with elites and Rift Guardians. Of course, you'll want to keep that up as often as you can. And over here to the right side, we're going to be using Cyclone Strike, Implosion. Even though we aren't using those shoulders anymore, where were they? Even though we aren't using these shoulders anymore, Cyclone Strike still plays a big role. It helps us to bunch up enemies and pull them in, and that's what we really want with seven-sided strike and Exploding Palm. We want really high density and in a very close proximity, so Cyclone Strike is still a must. And Implosion just increases the distance away that we pull enemies up to 34 yards. And of course, we're using Dashing Strike, Blinding Speed, gain 40% increased dodge chance for 4 seconds after using Dashing Strike. I cannot talk today. This is just going to increase our toughness when we're getting in or out of a battle. And then, of course, we're using Exploding Palm. We're going for the Impending Doom rune. Exploding Palm no longer causes the enemy to bleed, but if the enemy dies while affected, they explode for 6,305%. That is the biggest damage dealer of all these, and we're not really worried about the bleed anyways. We want the most damage, and we're going to be Exploding Palm from our seven-sided strike, so we're going with Impending Doom. For the passive skills, there is a little bit of playroom here depending on what you're using. What we're using today is Mythic Rhythm. Every third hit from your Spirit Generator increases the damage of your next damage spender by 40%. So another damage buff to seven-sided strike because it's a Spirit Spender. And we're going to be wanting to keep Spirit Guards up all the time. So on things like the Rift Guardian or whatever, we'll be buffing our seven-sided strike every time we use our Spirit Generator, basically, every time we hit that third hit. Using Beacon of Yeetar, reduce all cooldowns, more cooldown reduction by 20%. Guardian's Path, we are dual wielding, so we gain 35% increased dodge chance. And of course, that translates into more toughness. And we're also using Harmony, 40% of your single element resistances from items. Instead, increase your resistance to all elements. Now, on to the original version of this build, or the old version. You can use a Hellfire Amulet, and you can use Focus and Restraint, and then you can plop your Unity into the cube. Now, that is going to get rid of Convention of Elements. Convention of Elements is a huge damage boost, but as a monk, we have five elements, so it's 4 out of every 20 seconds instead of 4 out of every 16 seconds. So it does take longer for Convention of Elements to come around. Not to mention, each one of these are their own separate 50% multiplier, so I think it's a little more than actually 100%, whereas Traveler's Pledge is 100%, and you have to be standing still to take effect of it. So once you're in an elite pack, or once you've been on a Rift Guardian for a little bit, this is going to be stacked up to 100%. But if you want that 100%, or however much it adds up to, damage more often, then Focus and Restraint are the way to go. And this is where I was saying you have a little play with the passives, because now you're adding in a Hellfire Amulet. You've got a 5th passive that you can play with if you want to go for more damage or toughness, depending on what you're doing. But the kind of newer version of this uses a Compass Rose, and if I can put the right gems there we go. Compass Rose, Traveler's Pledge, Endless Walk set, and yeah, we are now wearing our Unity because we've got the Convention of Elements in there. So Paragon points, this is going to kind of depend on your level, of course. But Maximum Spirit helps. Again, this is a somewhat heavy. It's not the heaviest Spirit build out there, but it's a somewhat heavy build, especially if you're using Cyclone Strike a lot. So maximum spirit is nice. Movement speed is also nice to get around. Of course, I've pumped a lot of points into vitality because my gear is garbage, and I'm still just at 1 million health. So that's a little bit of the reason that I'm only doing an 85 as well. And then, of course, put the rest in dexterity. For offense, you're going to want critical hit, chance, and damage. As always, you'll almost always, unless it's a Thorns build, go critical hit, chance, damage. And then for this build, we're going to go cooldown reduction and attack speed. And then you'll go resist all, armor, life, and life regeneration. I don't usually put life until third. I usually put it after these two because life percent doesn't actually help very much unless you already have a lot of life. Because again, it's a percentage. So a low pool of life, if you're somebody that you're fairly low level and you've only got 300 or 400k health, life percent isn't going to be that much. Whereas someone with 1 million health adding on another 25% adds up quite a lot more. And then finally for the utility, life per hit, area damage, resource cost reduction, or gold find. Or if you're wanting to manage your spirit a little better, you can go resource cost reduction second. So that is, I believe we've covered everything, haven't we? We've covered the gear, we covered the cube, covered the skills, and covered the Paragon points. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, let me know if you guys like the newer style of these videos or the older ones, or if it doesn't really matter. And yeah, you can even see here, I've actually got 2 vitality gems in here, and I'm still just at 1 million life. So my gear is far from good. If you had completely optimized gear, actually I'm not sure if these guys are completely optimized, but I think the highest right now this build has done is 103. So it's gonna take some, yeah, they've got a lot of ancients, and they've actually got a pretty decent amount of Caldescence Despair too. So that doesn't mean that this build is going to top out in the low hundreds, but I mean, they're not really high, Paragon. So, but it definitely can reach into the hundreds. At least the low hundreds is probably not, now don't quote me on it, but it's probably not going to be the best pushing build. I mean, after all, with the buffs that came with, with the buffs that came with Sun Wuko's, man, this thing just does so much insane damage. It's going to be hard, really, really hard to pass that. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of the build and the new version. Do you like the old version better? I still think this version is going to be the best damage. I tested both of them, and I seem to shave about a minute off of my Greater Rift 85 times. So, so yeah, keep that in mind. And of course, like I said, you've got 5 elements, but once you do get to your physical element, if you've got an Oculus ring, make sure you get to that Oculus ring and use your Cyclone Strike to get everything in, and then just nuke them down with your physical roll. So thank you guys for watching, and hope you enjoyed the video, and more good stuff to come. Take care.